Welcome in, I'm Artris, and in this video we're going to be going over Red Law, a new leader from OP14 that a lot of people have touted as the worst leader from the set, and let me tell you, it is. Just kidding, it's much better than people have anticipated. The ability reads, activate main once per turn, select 2 of your Supernova or Heart Pirates type characters, swap the base power of the selected characters with each other during this turn. This leader ability is very lore accurate, which I can always appreciate, but it's also very strong based off of the support that has come out in this set. But before we go over the deck list and how the leader operates, if you're new to the channel, please make sure to hit that sub button and also give the video a thumbs up while you're at it. It helps out the channel so much. Thank you all for the support. Additionally, if you'd like to talk about the One Piece card game outside of the YouTube comments, please make sure to join the Discord community. The link for that is in the description below. With this leader, there's a couple different ways you can build it. I think the most common and probably the most consistent way to build it is with the Supernova Heart Pirate package, where you're playing really strong characters on curve and then using your ability to get multiple swings in a turn, overwhelming your opponent. There is a very interesting control build that I've been messing around with, which I'll go over at the end of the video if anyone's interested in that. But in the meantime, let's talk a little bit about how this deck is built out. So of course, with this deck, you're playing a lot of 1-cost and 2-cost characters that you can then swap the power with some of your 5, 7, and 9-costed characters, and in doing so, overwhelm your opponent with these like 8,000 power, 10,000 power swings that your opponent's going to have to then the next turn decide what's the most important thing to get off the board, or rather the easiest thing to get off the board, and that usually is going to be the smaller characters. As a result, then your bigger characters will be able to stick on the board a lot easier. Starting off, we're running a playset of 2k counters in Makino. This is a 1-cost. Activate main, you may rest this character up to one of your red characters with a cost of 1, gains plus 3,000 power during this battle. This card we've seen a lot of in Red Zoro, but it's really strong in this deck because you are running 12 1-cost characters, and of course, if you use your leader ability to make that 1-cost character a lot stronger, then you pump it up with this Makino, you're hitting for really hard. Then I'm running a playset of the new Killer. It's a 1-cost, 1,000 power character that says activate main once per turn, give up to 1 rested Dawn card to your leader or one of your characters. This is really great against decks like Green Mihawk or any of the 6k leaders like Ace or UP Luffy, because usually you are going to be playing on curve, and when you play on curve, it's really hard to swing just a flat 5 into those leaders, so having that extra Dawn to play with is very nice. There are some cards that have abilities with Dawn underneath them, and so this also can help with that. Then I'm running a playset of the new Basil Hawkins. On KO, look at 5 cards from the top of your deck and play up to 1 Supernova type character card with 2,000 power or less, other than Basil Hawkins, and then place the rest at the bottom of your deck in any order. This will grab a lot of cards, and of course your opponent's not really going to want to get rid of this because it just replaces itself with a multitude of different options. Then to round out the 1-costed characters, we have a playset of Luffy, a 1-cost character that has 0 power, but it has a really good couple of effects here. On play, look at the top 5 cards of your deck, reveal up to 1 Supernova type card other than Monkey D. Luffy, and then add it to your hand, and then place the rest at the bottom of your deck in any order. The second effect is when attacking, give up to one of your opponent's characters minus 1,000 power during this turn. The when attacking clause is really useful because you usually are going to be hitting face, being as aggressive as possible, but because you can reduce the power of characters on the opponent's side of the field, you can decide to trade into the board if that's the case, and this Luffy helps do that. Then we're running a playset of Cavendish, a 2-cost, 2,000 power character that says if this character has 5,000 power or more, this character gains Rush. This is a great card to throw down towards the end game where your opponent might not be expecting an extra swing, and if you have some big bodies already established, throwing this Cavendish down when your opponent is expecting nothing for 2 Dawn, and then swapping the power with, say, a 10,000 power character is extremely overwhelming and usually can close out a game if that's the case. And then another playset of 2k counters are running the new Barto. This acts as a blocker on the field with 2 Dawn underneath it, but most of the time I am just using this as a 2k counter. And then to round out the 2k counters we have are the 2k counter Sanji, which is an on play, choose up to one of your Straw Hat Crew type characters with power of 6,000 or more. During this turn, your opponent may not activate blocker when that character attacks. This is a very important card for very niche situations where your opponent is down to 0 life, they've established blockers, and you need to go for game. There's a couple of cards that you can apply this Sanji to, one of them being the Luffy we just talked about, and then one of them being a 7-cost Zoro, which we'll get to in a second. And then finally, to cover all of the smaller characters, and probably my favorite out of all of these is the 3-cost Rouge. It's in when attacking, if this character has 5,000 power or more, draw 1 card, and then KO up to one of your opponent's characters with 3,000 base power or less. So oftentimes your opponent's going to have searchers, and those searchers will then be able to get rid of the bodies on the board that are swinging or using your leader ability on to make more powerful, which can be really annoying because because of course that is a swing that's really free for them, and you want to make it difficult for the opponent to have to get rid of your small bodies. So this Yarouge will allow you to do that by just attacking. On top of that, you're drawing a card in the process. There's not any card draw in this deck outside of this card, so this is a very important piece to be able to establish early on. Of course, you're not going to likely be able to protect this, and that's fine. It's gotten its ability off at least once if you can draw, and you're happy with that. Then on to some of the baseline characters we have is the 4-cost 5,000 power Captain Kidd from this set as well. It's a blocker, and on play, if your leader has the Supernova's type, play up to 1 character card with 2,000 power or less from your hand. So this card being able to cheat out all of the characters that we've seen previously is very important. The MVP of the deck, in my opinion, is the 5-cost X-Drake. This is a 5-cost 7,000 power character. It says opponent's turn once per turn. If your Supernova's type character would be removed from the field by your opponent's effect, you may give your leader minus 2,000 power during this turn instead, and then Dawn ×1 when attacking. Give it to one of your opponent's characters minus 2,000 power during this turn. So a couple of very important clauses here. One, having that built-in protection is super nice here. A lot of times your opponent might just try to get rid of the bodies on board with like a Gravity Blade or like a Red Rock, and with this on the field, you can then just say no to that. And that's really important because your opponent will then try to turn their attention towards attacking your leader, which is going to be easier to attack into because at that point you're going to be a 3,000 power leader, and you're happy with that because you're getting cards from life instead of having to protect your board. So this X-Drake, for that effect alone, is worth running. But the second effect with the Dawn ×1 when attacking, give up to one of your opponent's characters minus 2,000 power during this turn, it just makes trading into boards a lot easier. As I mentioned with the Luffy, you have the option of just attacking face, but you can also then, if you want to, minus 1,000 power and swing into a character that's rested on the board. This X-Drake also really helps with that ability as well, and one of the reasons why I've considered a control version of this deck because of just the amount of cards that reduce the power on the opponent's side of the field. Then I'm running a playset of the 7-cost Zoro. It's a 7-cost 8,000 power rush character that says when attacking, give up to one of your opponent's characters minus 1,000 power during this turn. As you can see, there's a lot of synergy here with power reduction and the characters that we have in this deck, so this is also a really good card to throw down on curve. Our curve is very, very specific. We're trying to go like 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, and if you don't hit that, it's not the biggest deal in the world. You can establish a pretty wide board in the meantime, but of course, if you do see X-Drake into Zoro into the 9-cost Law, all of these cards in succession are going to really just overwhelm the opponent, and you can very easily win from those board states. Now, the 9-cost Law says rush. That's great. On your opponent's attack once per turn, you may trash 2 cards from your hand, select one of your characters, and swap the base power of the selected character with the base power of your leader during this battle. So a great way to be able to protect yourself in the late game, especially if you have bricks in hand. Now, a lot of the cards we've talked about so far have counter, but of course your big players here, the 9-cost, the 7-cost, and the 5-cost, don't have counter, and as a result can be just dead in hand if you have a lot of these stacked up. With this Law, of course, you can just pitch those cards and then swap powers, which is really nice here. And then finally, I'm running 3 of I Have a Plan. This is a 1-cost event that just looks at the top 4 and grabs a Straw Hat Crew or Supernova type card, add it to your hand. Just an additional searcher on top of the Luffy, which is really important to be able to find these pieces to progress the game state for your aggression. The trigger is draw 1 card, which is not awful. Of course, it'd be nice if the trigger was activate main, but I can't complain with a trigger on an event here. Overall, I do think that this leader is pretty undervalued. I think that when the pool list was coming out with all of the leaders and people were talking about what would be the best, obviously Boa, Mihawk, and Purple Doffy were heavy considerations for the best of this set. I don't think Law is one of those decks that people have considered, and to be fair, it's not amazingly strong, but I do think that if you find your right curve and you play optimally, you can win a lot of your games. I don't think that this Law is a bad deck. That being said, OP14 has been pretty nice for a lot of the decks that have come out. Most of the decks that you can see come out of OP14 have some competitive viability. Law arguably is one of the worst. I personally don't think it is, but I think that Law, in a lot of people's eyes, has been seen as a bad deck overall, but I don't really think that it's a bad deck in the scheme of the meta. So hopefully some people out there also agree with me and have been cooking with this deck. But that being said, let's take this list into the sim and see how it does. All right, Law into Purple Doffy. I feel like this is a pretty solid matchup for me, but it can go either way, of course, if they just overwhelm the board. This hand's pretty keepable because we have a lot of searchers, and we can fill out our curve here. Finding a Yarouge is pretty nice to throw down on 3. Of course, the Sugar probably is going to be played out with a 1-cost Dellinger. They don't decide to do that. We'll just swing into the Sugar and hope that they don't use their leader ability here. Of course, they're just going to be able to find something with this 1-cost. I do appreciate the fact that we are in kind of like a lore-accurate battle. Mortal enemies here going at it. They decide to grab the 10-cost Doffy. Okay, so keep that in mind. Maybe we can prevent them from hitting 10 anytime soon. We draw into the X-Drake, really nice there. Throw down the Yarouge, and this next turn, what we can end up doing is, well, I guess it depends. We'll take the 5. If they throw it on a 1-cost Dellinger, I guess we just KO one of these units. It doesn't really matter what we KO. We don't want to really KO the Dellinger, I suppose, just because we don't want to give them that free ramp. So let's just go swing 5 first and see what they do. Then we can throw the X-Drake down and then use the ability. Okay, they actually use their ability on the Dellinger. That's really good for us because we can play the X-Drake down, swap the abilities, or swap the power rather, and then KO the baby 5. We don't care if they do heal up here. That's not a problem. It's going to result in them reducing their Dawn by 1, meaning that it's a little bit harder for them to get to 10. They can still get there relatively fast, but I think, you know, anything to kind of pester them is nice. They do get rid of the Rouge, of course, as expected. This next turn, we don't really have too many good options. I mean, if we do get a 7-cost Zoro on curve, that's great. We can just play another X-Drake and have one as a backup, which is nice. Let's just go ahead and swing 5, see what they do here. Not too worried if they decided to use their leader ability, which they might. They could just redirect it into the Rosie and then get a free block off if that's the case. And then what we can do here, yep, that's what's to be expected. We could just swing 7, they'll take it. I think what we could do is then swap the Cavendish and be cheeky here and swing another 7 since they already used their ability, and then play an X-Drake down, pass the turn from here. And then this next turn, we will be able to swing with our leader. Hopefully these 2 X-Drakes survive. I don't think there's going to be anything that they can really do unless maybe they decide to use the 0-cost event, but usually they're going to establish a body here if that's the case. 5 into, presumably, yep, the Cavendish, that will let that go. And this next turn, we'll be able to have the Law come down and swing pretty heavily as well, which is pretty nice. So they go 7 into 7 potentially. Okay, so they are going to play the Divine Departure and swing 7 into -1,000. I'm not going to defend that, of course, even if I could. So we'll swing 5 into 1. Very likely. This could be a mistake here because they do have 2 open. You always have to consider... Oh, they're deciding to redirect the attack here. Interestingly enough... And I was going to say, you have to consider the slow beam, but yeah, that's actually a pretty solid play to prevent the X-Drake from attacking, but we'll still attack into the Rosie. I don't know if that's a play mistake on my part, something to consider though. We at least have this nice little board established, and we are keeping them off of 10 in the meantime. So as long as we can prevent them from playing out the 10 drop, I think we're in a decent spot for the time being. They're just going to do double searcher here. With 4 left, they might have... well, they have God Thread. Interesting to see. I was going to say they might have... Do we take this? I think we do take this. Okay. Always to consider something like that. Do we take these hits or not? Ooh, actually, okay. Luffy will grab another 9-cost, and then I think what we could just do is... I think we just swing 5 into probably one of the sugars, get rid of this body on the board. They might redirect it into the 4-cost sugar. But yeah, I was going to say, when they had the 4 open, it's pretty obvious they're going to play a sugar at that point for the most part. Okay, good to see that they used it. Virgo is scary because of the fact that it also has the X-Drake ability, but kind of for free. And then we'll play one more 9-cost here and swing 10 into lead. We're really applying the pressure. They're down to 1. They have a lot of cards in hand. Having 12 in hand is pretty insane. This play would be... Oh, God Thread is not good because the X-Drake has the built-in protection there. So we'll go ahead and just use the ability to reduce our leader by 2,000. I think this turn would have been better if they had just maybe played an 8-cost if they had it, but I think that a lot of people don't really read cards nowadays, and I think that's a problem. So if they do, yeah, they use the ability here. I'm just going to go ahead and protect this X-Drake. I think it's pretty important to keep it on the field. Let's give them a 2 and a 1. And if they decide to go really heavy into this X-Drake again, like a 9 into 5, obviously we have to let that one go. But if they decide to go like a 7 into the 5, again, I'm going to protect it. I think at this point, we kind of have to invest in protecting it, keeping as many bodies on the board as possible. This next turn, we actually have a lot of swings that can come through. Being a 10 Dawn, we could, yeah, we're just going to protect this one very easily. Let's go ahead and give them a 1K. Doesn't really matter which one. Other than the Cavendish, we do want to keep the Cavendish because the Cavendish is going to be the surprise attack that we're going to have. I think we just swing 5 first at 5 to 5. We could get the sugar off the field, but I think we just go for lethal in this scenario. We could also just swing this Luffy and then reduce the sugar down as well, because I don't think we're going to be using the ability on this Luffy. Here, what we could do is swing 8. We're going to feign the Virgo. We want to make sure that if we do have that Virgo targeted for the leader ability, that we will be able to KO it. They decide to counter out with 2 2Ks. We'll go ahead and play this Zoro and swing another 8, reducing this Virgo down even further, down to 4. Pretty nice there. This is always just like a backup plan, because if they decide we can't close out the game, then what we could do is swing into the Virgo and really just make sure that we close out the following turn. And then here, what we can do is just do 3 10s. They already used their leader ability, which is pretty nice. So this 10 will likely be countered out, I would imagine. If it does go through, then, I mean, here's the thing. We have another 2 10s coming their way, so I will just go and play. I want to show that we can do this with the Cavendish. We'll swap the abilities here and then swap the power, and they didn't even have enough, which was nice to see. We really overwhelmed them, and I think in that scenario where they played Godthread would have been better just to play the 8 cost. All right, into Kuzan. I think that this is going to be a fair matchup. Kuzan has gotten some new tools in his arsenal, and I think Law will be a good test to see if which deck kind of operates a little bit better. I think if I can get my engine going, I think it'll be good. Sand's pretty solid because we have a lot of searchers. Of course, they do decide to go first. Unfortunate. The Luffy will be able to grab this Kid, which Kid can then cheat out the Rouge. I think it's going to be an interesting decision. I think that having a Hawkins down is fine, just having 2 1-cost bodies, because they do have ways to get rid of some of these bodies. I think the new 4-cost character they have is able to get rid of a 1-cost character, so having 2 on the field is at least insurance that one of these will stick. Now, this next turn, what we can do is just swing 5. They play out the Sengoku. Sengoku grabs a Bluegrass and Sakazuki, Bluegrass being that card I was just talking about, bottoming a 1-cost. We'll swing 5, play out the Kid, cheating out the Rouge, and then we will then swap the power of the Kid and the Basil Hawkins and swing 5 again, just asking for cards out of hand. Now, if they decide to get rid of the Luffy with the Bluegrass, I think is what it was called, I don't remember, then they'll likely get rid of, maybe the Hawkins would be a good option for that, but they do decide to get rid of the Luffy. That's understandable. They will attack into the Hawkins, and hopefully we can find a replacement. Killer's a solid option because of the fact that we just get value off of it over time. 5 into 5, I think we just take this one. This next turn, what we can do is use the 1-cost event and play an X-Drake down. X-Drake is, I think, really important in these scenarios, preventing any kind of removal for my turn, or rather their turn. It does work. If I hit like a Gravity Blade out of life, it does get rid of the X-Drake, unfortunately, so something to keep in mind. We want to do our swings essentially last, but of course we need to swap powers here. So let's go ahead and swing the Rouge. We'll pop the Sengoku, I think is a better target, because it's harder to swing into some of these bodies with just the Tashigi. We'll draw a Luffy, and I think we just get rid of... I mean, we could just play the 1-cost event. I don't know if we need to establish a Luffy and see what we get here. I think grabbing this 2K is probably fine. We have a lot of 2Ks in hand, but we're going to probably use some of these for later. Like the Sanji's pretty important if they decide to block her up. Of course, they go into the Rouge. We'll let that one go. There's not really a way for us to get rid of it, or protect it, rather. And then if they go into the Kid with their leader, I think it's going to be easy to protect that one, because here on 7, usually they're just going to play down like Sakazuki for the most part. They could play the new 5-cost Isho, I think is what he is, Fujitori. Sakazuki coming down, of course, as expected, drawing a lot of cards in the process, and then the ability being able to put a Dawn underneath a leader or character, so they'll put it underneath their leader and swing 6 into the Kid. I think I'll just give them the Barto that I just searched out. They know that I have it. I don't want to give them more information than I already have. Here, we'll use a search for the Luffy, see if we can find... I was hoping to find a 7-cost Rush Zoro, but we don't find it. I think just grabbing another X-Drake is okay. We'll use the ability here, and I think we just try to trade into this Bluegrass, because it does get them a lot of value over time. I think we'll just play the X-Drake down. It's not the best. It's okay. We're fine. I think what we do is we just swing 7 lead. I think I'm going to keep the Kid up as a blocker, and I don't know if I'm going to use the ability to swing with the Killer. I kind of want this Killer to have some more value and then use the ability on the Luffy this next turn. They do counter out. I'll just pass the turn at that point. I didn't use my ability. That's all right. You don't have to use it every turn. You don't have to swing with everything. I want to make sure that these units are going to at least stay alive the best that I can. Here comes the Garp. Garp then pitching a Gravity Blade into another Sakazuki. At least it's not a Kuzan. If the Kuzan came out, it means one of these units is not attacking. What this means is we can attack with both of these units next into any of the rested units. So let's go ahead and protect this X-Drake. It is very important here. If they decide to swing into the X-Drake again, we could block. I think we just take this hit. The 6 into 5 is... I don't want to give them a 2K there. We want to have more counter in hand to be able to protect these units this turn. Here is going to be a very interesting... We want to get our max value of all the characters in the field. So kind of... We want to play the 9-drop, you know... We want to also like swing into things. I think what we can do is then swap the power of these two, swing 7 into 5, just further reduce it down. They actually let it go because I don't think they realized it went down by another 1,000 power. 5,000 in a lead here. They'll probably give us a 1K. And what we can do is then swing 7 with the X-Drake and then play over the Luffy, because it's going to go down to the Tashigi anyway. So we just play over the Luffy. And then we just play the 9-cost over this Luffy here. And then we'll swing 10 into lead. We could also swing, I mean, I should have just probably swung the X-Drake first, but it's okay. What we can do is then use the, oh, yeah, that's where I made a mistake. Just swing with the X-Drake. I was talking about Gravity Blade first. I got a little ahead of myself. I was a little bit excited. Misplays were made. Learn from this mistake. Swing with the X-Drake first. They'll probably go 8. Oh, go 8 into lead. I feel like they probably feel a little threatened here if that's the case. Okay, so we will take that one. I think we just block this next one because there is a world where they can bypass this kid. I think we just block it. And then maybe we go down to 0. I think we have a way of at least closing this game out with our current board. What a mistake there. Oh my gosh, feels bad. Oh well, sometimes, you know, good learning mistake. What is this? Ice time? They just played ice time? What the heck is that? It froze my units? I forgot it. Okay, EBO4. We'll go over this card in a second. I think we just take this hit and then kind of just go for game. There's a couple of ways we can go for lethal here. I think one of them we'll find if we can see a rusher with this Luffy. You know what? Instead of playing the Luffy, let's see what they do first. Let's swap the power of the Law and the Killer so that we can swing, and we'll put a Dawn underneath it. We'll swing 11 and delete. It's going to ask for a lot of cards out of hand here, and we might be able to read what we can do from there. With only one Dawn investment, I feel like it's a pretty good sign of what we can do. So here comes the Ice Block, so they are able to pitch a card and then go to 2 and 1. They have 3 in hand. I think what we can do is... Let's use the Luffy, see what we can get. Zoro is pretty solid here. I think what we do is we swing 7, 8 possibly. So yeah, let's go ahead and use the Killer ability, put the Dawn underneath the our leader, and then let's put another one on and swing 7 here. If this does not connect, I think we just lose. That Ice Time is pretty solid card overall. We'll swing an 8 here, and hopefully they don't have 2 2Ks. They have a 2 and a 1, and that's it. Okay, wow. We got a little bit lucky there. That was a really good card. That Ice Time almost won them the game there. Let's see here. Trash 1 card. If your leader has the Navy type, up to 2 of your opponent's characters with 10,000 power or less cannot attack into the end of your opponent's next end phase. Wow, what a card. It almost won them the game. We got a little bit lucky there with our search, and of course, the ability is just a powerful one to be able to swap the powers. All right, big bad ace here. I kind of like this hand. We have, I mean... They're going first, which is smart. I think usually they want to go second, and usually we want to go first, but I think they want to throw us off our curve a little bit and take the aggression, which I don't blame them. But this hand is pretty solid because of the fact we have a lot of options. We have this Killer to be able to put the Dawn underneath our leader every turn so that we are swinging with 6 every turn efficiently into them. We also have a Searcher to be able to fill out our curve a little bit, so we're looking pretty good. I think if we can find like the Kid blocker with our Luffy search, maybe that's going to be a solid option here. We don't have it. The Urouge is pretty nice. Having a second Law is also pretty solid, but I think the Urouge just having a nice option for our forward on turn is going to be best here. I think we play the Hawkins out so we don't signify... I think we play the Hawkins out. I was going to say we could play the Killer out, but I think we want to not show them that we have the Killer, make them think that maybe it's going to be a little bit harder to swing into them, and then not have them have a target to bounce back potentially for the next turn. I mean, they still would have it, but we want to have the Urouge and the Killer on the same time, so that they have to choose between those two if they're going to bounce anything back with like an Atmos. This turn, of course, is probably just going to be swinging either really big. It looks like really big, and I was going to say play a Searcher. Maybe they play a Searcher here. They don't have a Searcher. Okay, that's fine. Play this Killer down. Having a backup one is always nice. We'll go ahead and swing 6 first, just in case there's a trigger in life. We learned from the Kuzan game. Oh, man, that's pain. I always think about that, and then I'm like... and then sometimes I turn my brain off and just swing. You know what? It's just some things. Just dumb player things at times. And then we'll play this Urouge out after this hit either goes through or doesn't. They might want to protect it because we will be pretty aggressive from our next turn on. Yeah, once we hit like 5 in this deck, we really hit a power spike. They take it. They go down to 2. That's fine. Usually as ace, I'll take the first hit anyway just to get a lot of cards in hand. And this next turn, what we can end up doing is playing out the X-Drake and swinging with our leader for 6. And then swinging with the Urouge for 8. Pretty solid option overall. Let's go ahead and play the X-Drake out. Oh, actually, it's... I mean, we have to. We have to be able to get the Killer. I'm getting flashbacks to our Kuzan match. We'll swing 6 in the lead here. Most aces don't run Gravity Blade anyway. Some do. I've gone against a few that have it, but hopefully it's not in life if they do have it. Let's go ahead and use the X-Drake here. Swap the power. Swing 8. These are very efficient numbers against ace. 6, 8, 10s are really nice. You don't really want to swing into anything that will give them a free leader ability. The 6 into them was nice because they used an ability to be able to minus by a lot when they could have just given us a 1k. Here, I wouldn't doubt if they actually block with this They take it, they draw another card. Maybe they don't feel like they're going to get punished here, and that's fine. They have a lot of cards in hand, and it is kind of overwhelming for us to be able to break through that. Although if we can get them to 0, and if we find, I mean, if we find, we just keep the Luffy upright, and then we swap the ability, or swap the powers of the 9-cost Law with the Luffy, and then give it unblockable, we can actually get past their Newgate and their Marco blocker. So that is an option, of course. But I think our best option this next turn is if we can get a 7-cost Zoro, which obviously is not really up to us. It's just if we draw it, run 4. So there's always a good chance we could see it. X-Drake is always going to be really solid here because of the fact that we have built-in removal. And yet again, an opponent decides to try to remove the X-Drake, and they are unable to. But if they want to swing into me, by all means, go for it. I will be happy to either counter out heavily or take some damage in the process. I don't want to take too much against Ace because they do run Pudding, of course, and we are already at 7 in hand, which is a lot of cards in hand against a Pudding deck. They get rid of the Urouge as expected. That's fine. I don't think they want to swing into face because, I mean, the Urouge is just getting me value overall. They put the Dawn underneath their leader. Here, let's see if we can find a 7-cost Zoro. We do with this search. Love to see it. Let's go ahead and put the killer ability to use. Swinging 6 into 6. We'll have to swing 7 into lead with the X-Drake, which is not, great numbers, but we can't help that because we are trying to play a little bit on curve here. Obviously, with the 7-cost Zoro, with 7 Dawn remaining, it's not like we can put anything underneath the X-Drake, and we want to get as many swings in as possible. So they do give us our leader ability to get out of that one. They instantly block. Interesting to see. I would have just given a 2K if that's the case. Here, 7-cost Zoro being an 8 into 6. Great numbers here, and then we can swap the power. I'll probably do the Hawkins because if the Hawkins goes down, then we're able to replace it, which is really nice. And then we'll leave the Luffy upright in the process of, in case we do get them down to 0, we can swap powers eventually once we have established the 9-cost. 8 into 6, really nice here. Obviously, like I've been talking about against Ace, these are really good numbers. You want to hit 8s as much as possible. It makes it difficult for them. Of course, when they accrue a huge hand size, you want to try to dwindle that hand size down before you go for lethal, and this is the best way to do it. This next turn, I would imagine, is going to be an 8-cost event into 10-cost Newgate. Wow, I'm surprised they took that one. Maybe they are bricked up, but maybe they're just being greedy. It's hard to tell. Sometimes Ace players don't respect decks like Law, where there's not really a way to punish their hand size, and they don't really expect a lethal, like a unblockable event, like a Sanji, for instance. But they're going to learn. They're going to learn. So here is the 8-cost event into the 10-cost Newgate as a blocker, drawing a boatload of cards in the process. And I would imagine that they're probably going to swing. If I were them, I'd probably swing into the X-Drake, to be quite honest. 9 into 7 is a solid number. Of course, they could swing 8 into it, maybe leave 1 open for Rad Beam if they have it. They also might want to swing into the Zoro, but regardless, I'm going to be able to protect both of these with whatever. If they want to swing into the Hawkins, it's kind of like a wasted swing in my opinion. They could also just swing face. Might be better at this point in time because if they're trying to contest the board, we already have them at 0. And so it's like they're playing a game that just they slowly lose out on. They go 8 to 8. We'll just give them a 1K here. And then this next turn, they do have a lot of cards in hand, so we'll keep that in mind. I don't know if we can necessarily go for lethal quite yet. I don't feel comfortable doing it based off of their hand size. So I think we just swing 8. We just try to poke their hand size down and get them down to a spot where we can go for lethal the next turn if we aren't able to get it this turn. Just by draining them a lot, because what they're going to do here is eventually they might block, and that's how they get a card draw, but blocking means they lose the body, and that's a really big body to lose. So let's just drain them of their hand size. We'll also reduce the power of the Newgate in the meantime so that it's kind of a more difficult decision for them to swap. They do have the Rad Beam. Understandable. Here, I'm just going to play over the Hawkins, and I'm going to use the killer to then swing 6 into lead here. We're threatening them with this Law, so if they decide to block, like a free block here, then I obviously am going to swing into face, but there is always the opportunity of me to get rid of their board. Again, it wouldn't make sense to, but, that's something for them to consider. 10 into 6, this is not a free block, by the way, because of the fact that the Newgate is now down to 9,000 power. Really nice to see that. And then, of course, we'll be able to swap. I think I'll swap the killer. I mean, it doesn't really matter too much. I don't think they're going to go for any of the small bodies regardless, but we could go for killer. We could use the Luffy. I think the Luffy might actually be a little bit better here to further reduce the Newgate down so they can't just like block and give us a 2K. They're thinking hard about this one. They might not have enough counter. They've taken a lot of life. It means that it could be bricked up. They were, wow. Okay, so they had 2-2-1, so they could have gotten out of this one based on that alone, but the next hit, they would have had to block with the new gate and lose the new gate in the process, and then also not have cards in hand. So yeah, we did really well for going second. I think that the red rock was the one thing that they could have done differently, maybe establish a different body in the meantime. All right, into the other boss monster of this meta with Boa Hancock here. This hand is really solid, even though they're going first. Well, everyone's taken first from me. Does everyone know? It's kind of... I would expect Boa to go second. I would expect Ace to go second. Regardless, we're going to play these Luffys down and just grab what we can. The 4 cost for a curve, and then the X-Drake for protection, and then also a curve. If they start stacking their life, I think we don't swing. And they play a Hiyori, so we're not going to swing. I think I would have swung if they didn't play the Hiyori, because I want to be aggressive against them. But I think what we just do in the meantime is establish a board and kind of threaten them with this like looming board that eventually will start swinging. Yet again, another Searcher playing down. Love to see it here. I guess we just grab a killer, and then we'll pass the turn. We don't need all the X-Drakes we have. That's too many bricks in hand. And we're not trying to build houses here. So this next turn, what we can end up doing is we can swing 5 with the kid, swing 5 with the law, and then swing 7 with like a swapped Luffy. Alternatively, we could just not do anything, which is also a very viable thing to do in the meantime. They are playing the 4-cost Hancock, so they opt not to play it. Okay, 7 into 5. I think I have to counter out of this one so I don't get pudding to the next turn if that's the case, because I do like the curve we have. Unfortunate, but it is what it is. And another stacker. So the Gloriosa, putting something that, so the top 2 life have bodies coming out of it. We can just assume the worst. So let's not swing until we can just really push them down to an uncomfortable life total, I think is probably the important thing here. We'll go ahead and play the X-Drake down. Not really doing anything else with our turn, and then passing at that point. Once again, we're establishing a board. Our board looks better than theirs. I'll give us that. Our board looks much better. And then what we can end up doing is hopefully get a 7 cost. If not a 7 cost, we can establish another X-Drake. And I think we have to actually like pressure them, because this next turn, if we don't, then we're just like losing life for no reason. Marguerite coming out. They're at 4 cards in hand, and they're going to go to 9. That is the Boa Hancock. Okay, so we have to pressure this turn or else we just lose life for free. We're going to lose it regardless, but I definitely want to make sure that we're in lethal range for this next turn. Of course, they're snap taking these. Gorgon Sisters, of course, is the worst card we could see, but we knew that they had something there regardless. This next life is also something, so we'll keep that in mind. They give us a 2k counter. Gorgon Sisters will go 7 in the lead. They could block this one, and we take a life in the process. They just take it, so it's a ran. I think we swap the Luffy and the X-Drake. We'll swing 7 again, reducing the Hancock. They'll probably, I was going to say, they'll block one of these eventually. And then here we'll play out one more X-Drake. Do we play anything else is the question, and I think the answer is no. I think we want to hold on to as much as possible in our hand because of the fact that they're going to play a 9 cost, heal up 1. Yeah, I'm thinking about the killer, but I think we just keep it. The thing is, like, they're going to play this 9 cost. We need as much counter. We're going to lose a life in the process. They're going to pump up all of their characters and leader with the Ran and the Gorgon Sisters. And then we kind of just have to push for lethal this next turn. Okay, so unlucky. We're hoping for a counter out of that one. 2 bricks is not what we want to see, but they're bricked up as well, which is important to note. We might have a way to lethal this next turn. So with 2 cards in hand that have counter potentially, we can kind of math out, hopefully math out in a way to be able to just finish it out this next turn, as long as we stay alive. Okay, putting Dawn underneath the Hiyori is never really a good thing. I mean, they have to do it regardless because they can just use the Dawn efficiently that way, but, it's actually really good here because they can swing into the Luffy. We'll take the 7. That's going to be probably the worst. Yeah, it's going to be the worst one out of all of these. They go 6 into... I mean, they could have just swung 6 in the lead. We would have given them a 2k. Here, we'll give them a 2k to protect the kid, or the kid, rather, and we'll give them a 2k to protect the kid. We would have been able to get out of those swings regardless, so it doesn't really matter where those went. Here, though, I think we just go ahead and start off with a 5 swing, see what they give us, because we know 2 of these cards are counter, or 3 of these cards are counterless. They give us a 1k. Let's go 6 in the lead, see if we can read their hand a little bit better. They take... Good to see that last card wasn't a 2k. Slave Arrow is unfortunate because it means they do get to at least draw 2 and then put 2 to the bottom of the deck. Getting rid of some of these bricks that they did show us. Unlucky. That is unlucky here. They do take a 7. I'm surprised to see that one. Gloriosa. Then stacking the top. The worst case scenario here would probably be... I think the worst case scenario would likely be a blocker to come out of life. I don't know if they have 0 cost event in this deck or beige. I guess those would also be pretty bad as well. We'll swing 7 into lead since it has been working so far. They counter out of this one. They do have counters. We'll go ahead and swing 9 here, and hopefully, I mean, this one will likely connect, and then we'll swap the Luffy, and this one should connect overall, and it does. They didn't have any counter at that point. I don't like to play it that way, but it worked out. Of course, when you do see them start stacking life, you don't want to give them those triggers for free. Usually I like to be aggressive, but because they showed us what they had, we kind of had to do that. We're going to go against Jinbe. Finally, we get to choose if we go first or not. I'm going to instantly mulligan that hand because I didn't like the curve. This one's a lot better because we have a 1-3, and potentially we can find something on 5 or 4-5 by that point in time. And then we have a 7-cost Zoro as well. So our curve is looking pretty solid. This Urouge is pretty nice. They do have the opportunity to bounce it back with a bounce law if they do have it on curve. The Arlong grabbing a 2K and the 3-cost promo Arlong. And then here we're just going to swing 5, play to the Urouge down, and then pass the turn. And then hope to find something effective to pump up the Urouge for the next turn. X-Drake obviously is the best target, but we do have the opportunity to draw into a Kid, and worst case scenario, we can always just put Dawn underneath the Urouge and swing as well. The Urouge will be able to get rid of some of these small bodies along the way, which is really important to be able to tempo the Jinbe, because Jinbe is aggressive but also has tempo in its kit. We'll take this hit. X-Drake, love to see it. We have our plan. This next, I mean, obviously X-Drake is coming down the next turn. Now, if we have the Urouge, that would be nice, but I don't envision it will be. Oh, wow. It is going to stick for a turn. That's lovely to see. They are going to swing with these Arlongs because they might as well, because of the fact that at least something's going to go down this next turn. Now, the question is, do we swing into it? I kind of want to, but I also just want to be aggressive here. I think we'll test the waters and see how aggression works. Maybe, it depends on what they do with the Shirahoshi. Maybe they block with it. I want to get them down to 3. That's the reason why I'm swinging life, because the Arlong, promo Arlong only works if the Jinbe, or the leader rather, is in 4 life or more, and we at this point obviously they're going to be at 4 life or more, so we're going to have to lose the Arlong, or lose a card in hand from the Arlong ability. But at least we're being aggressive and pushing our game state, or game plan rather, in this meantime. At this point, I think we kind of have to just ignore the board. I hate to say it, but them pumping up their board to swing into us means that we can counter swing into them and force them to go down to a low life total. This is an interesting take. Do we protect the Basil Hawkins? It doesn't matter that much. It's a nice extra swing to have, but it's also a counter that we can have, or a card to pitch regardless. So we'll just pitch it and then counter out of this one. I think we're okay going down to maybe 2 life. I don't want to take too much damage, of course, because once they get to 8, that's a really scary turn for us, because they can hit really hard with the 8-cost Rush Jinbe, which they just grabbed. Here, let's give them a 1K, because they might pump up the other Arlong in the process. And do we go for the 3-cost Arlong in this next turn? I think we just take this one, draw a card in the process, and then I think we go 5 into lead. I think we just kind of race them a little bit. I think we just say, hey, if you have it and you can beat us down, go for it. But we're just going to hit them down as hard as possible. I could have done like a Zoro swing and then an X-Drake, but I am not taking a chance at a Gravity Bladed Life yet again. A lesson learned. And so that's why we swung 7-8. We could have done 8-8, but I think, I mean, it connected regardless. This turn was going to be interesting. They have a lot of cards in hand, so it means they could pump up their characters pretty heavily. Here is the 8-cost Jinbe. They might try to go for the board. They might feel a little bit threatened if that's the case. Looks like they're going to just give their characters the ability to swing pretty tall. 7, looks like. Maybe they go like 7-7. I mean, they could go like 6-7. Oh, they're just going to go for the board. Okay, so if this is the case, I think we let the X-Drake go because we want to keep the Zoro alive, and I think we can. They're not going to pump it up anymore. That's good for us. We'll go ahead and give them a 1 and a 2. And then this next turn, we have the ability to swing pretty heavy here. I think what we could do is just start off with a... They're going to go 5. We just take as many of these hits as possible. What we're going to do is we have a couple options, actually. Okay, so 6, we'll give you 2 1s. There you go. I don't have a 2K, you can have 2 1s. Here, we might just go 9. Oh, they decided to concede, they didn't have enough counter. That's, I mean, we have to put our foot to the gas and pressure the Jinbe before they pressure us. Kind of the classic aggro matchup. I'm very glad that we were able to get that win against Ace. That felt really good, being able to play our curve and just overwhelm them there. And of course, them not being able to remove anything really helps on our side. The Jinbe game was extremely close for comfort. I kind of just had to hit the gas and got a little bit lucky. I don't think that's always going to be the case in those scenarios, but you know what? Better lucky than good overall. With this leader, I'm extremely happy. This is one of those leaders that I enjoy playing just for fun, going on the sim and just getting some games in. This leader, I don't feel stressed out when I play it. It's almost a little bit brain off in some instances because if you do see your curve, you just play it down. But of course, curve gaming is one of those where if you don't see your curve, how do you situate out of those? And I think in those moments is when you can really determine if the deck is good or not. And I think if you don't see your curve in some scenarios, it can be really rough, but there's still lots of playability, of course, with this deck if you don't see your 1, 5, 7, 9. That being said, I don't think I'd make too many changes to the current deck list that we have, but I do want to share a deck list that I started to mess around with. I don't think it's anywhere near good, but it's definitely something to get the thought process going for a lot of people out there. So hopefully you guys will take this and maybe run with it and do a little bit better than what I have. So with this version of the deck, I wanted to go more of a control variant because as you've noticed, there's a lot of cards that have the minus reduction to power, which can be very important, especially in red. So of course we've leaned into that with Otama's, Ace and Sabo and Luffy's being able to reduce power. Of course, the Luffy being able to reduce power. This Shachi and Penguin being able to reduce power. This one just being able to KO base power, but also draw you cards. Beppo being able to KO things that have a certain power or less. And then, of course, we didn't talk about this, the 6-cost law being able to reduce power as well, very important. But as a result, how do you get rid of things on the board? Ben Beckman being able to trash, Rayleigh being able to KO and also reduce, Divine Departure being a defensive event, but also being able to KO based off of power. And then finally, Roundtable being able to get rid of really big bodies. And of course, this is also searchable because it is a Supernova's card, so this Luffy can find it. Of course, this is kind of a very first edition of what I've been messing around with, but this list is something I'll continue to cook on a little bit more. Let me know though in the comments what you guys think about this one, and of course the law list that we currently have. There's a lot of things I have working on right now, but this one of course is the one that I think is more consistent and just better in general for this current environment. Let me know what you guys think about this list, law in general. Are there any spicy additions that I haven't included in any of these deck lists that you are using in yours? Let me know as well in the comments below. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.